Hi folks, Dave, the Honest Audiophile, and this is the Aoshida LetShuoer E20, and these are my Honest Audiophile impressions. I want to thank Aoshida for providing the E20 for a review. Do greatly appreciate it. Aoshida, you rock. Alright, so the Aoshida LetShuoer E20. This will set you back $50 from your bank account. It is a semi-open, vented, dual driver IEM. It has a 10mm beryllium and a 8mm DLC. 12 ohms of impedance, 98 decibels of sensitivity, and a frequency response range of 20 Hz to 40 kHz. The Aoshida LetShuoer E20. It comes in this white box. You get a picture here of the IEM, a little bit of branding, and we have a high-res sticker. It's got to sound good. On the backside, you get some specs and some more information. And inside it's just a pretty standard unboxing experience. A couple accessories that you get is this hard shell that says Aoshida. It's a nice design fabric. It's going to protect the E20 very nicely. Unzipping the carrying case here, and you have a little strap for the E20 to be held in place with, and then a pocket for some accessories. You do get 2 pairs of tips. Both are silicone. And these tips are pretty standard as far as a conical grape olive shaped narrow bore tip. Those are the ones that I actually used. And then the other ones are a more shallow wide bore tip. I did notice a difference between the two tips. I noticed that the shallow wide bore tip added in more presence up top. They became more shouty, aggressive, and the bass did not have near as much impact and slam as they did with the more conical shaped tips. Also, the uppers were not near as present with the grape olive shaped tip. All sound impressions will be done using the grape olive shaped tip. All right, so the E20 looks like this. You can see the venting here on the faceplate, which is made of aluminum. The rest of the body is like a resin type of design. Not the thickest of shells. You do have a little bit of a wing, a fairly lengthy nozzle, and a decent angle. Nothing too aggressive. Overall, it's a well-built design. Kind of cool looking with that venting. The cable is very nice. I was rather impressed by the cable being 2-pin. Nice ear hooks. And then it has a nice cinch, which is actually rather hard to move. It does not slide down. And then it terminates into a 3.5. Nice twisted braid, thin but light, and also very well controlled. Overall, very, very nice cable. Comfort of the E20 is decent. It's nothing spectacular, but it does the job, and it doesn't cause any major fatigue. I can go for about an hour, hour and a half before I have to take them out and take a little bit of a break. They are a little bit on the border of being too big for my ears as far as the height and the shape of them. Thickness wise is not a problem at all. So comfort is okay. Isolation of outside noises is decent. Now these being vented, it's not the greatest. You're probably 50-55% of outside noises being blocked. You can hear a few things going on around you. You can carry on conversations with people. Louder vehicles and things like that are very noticeable. But other things are muffled. Overall, it's an okay design for an IEM. Start playing music and you'll drown some noises out. The E20 is not the easiest of IEMs to drive, being 12 ohms, 98 decibels of sensitivity. Most dongles will get it to volume, but I did find giving it a little bit more power, something with a little bit more oomph, will bring out some more character in the E20. I found that the E20 also is very picky when it comes to the presentation of your source. Using a more neutral leaning source, something like a Hibi FC3, the E20 is going to have a lot of energy, a lot of shoutiness and forwardness and aggressiveness in the uppers, and the bass is not going to be a very prominent part of the presentation, and they're going to be very fatiguing. Putting them on something a little bit warmer leaning, something like a Hibi FC4 is going to bring in some body, a little bit more of a natural presentation, and those uppers are not going to be near as shouty and aggressive. Using them on DAPs, I had the same issues. Using it on a Sony NWA105, they were very pleasant sounding, a little bit more body, not near as shouty and forward. Putting them on the Hibi R5 Gen 2, that brought out more of the shoutiness and aggressiveness. Putting them on desktop was a very hit or miss in its presentation. So the Mytek Liberty DAC 2, the FIO K11, the FIO K19, FIO Q15, AU and S9C Pro, all of those were very fatiguing sounding, and they had a lot of very aggressive upper end. Putting them on a warmer source like the AU and X1S GT or the Audeze Deckard, and the E20 sounded a lot more pleasant. It was not near as aggressive, bright, and hot sounding. How do the Aoshida LetShuoer E20 sound? So I found that the E20 bass is kind of ho-hum, lackluster, let's do what we have to do and get out of here type of presentation. It does have more sub bass than it does mid bass and upper bass. I found that the mid bass and upper bass are tucked, and they are very thin sounding, and they do not have a lot of impact and slam, and there's not a lot of note weight. Sub bass, you get some rumble and grumble, but again, it's not a very prominent sub bass. It does kind of come in when called upon, but it's a very timid type of presentation. It's not a very forthright, very authoritative and powerful type of bass overall. I found that it has just a lack of gumption. There's not a lot of energy, not a lot of dynamics, and it's just not a very fulfilling type of bass. It just has this dullness about it. The tonality is all right. Timbre is decent, and I found that the details and resolution are okay. It just lacks gumption. There's just not really anything there to connect with the music. The mids of the E20 are uneven and not cohesive. I found that the lower mids lack body, and they don't have a lot of note weight, and they are very thin sounding, and they're just not very, they don't build emotion. And then the upper mids are elevated and forward and somewhat aggressive and shouty. I found that the upper mids do have a little bit more body, and they have a little bit more presence, but unfortunately it's just a more forthright type of presentation, and it's just disconnected from the main mids and lower mids region, and it just doesn't sound balanced in the mids. Upper mids are the focal point, and they come across in a very shouty, aggressive way. Tonality is like the bass, it's okay, and timbre is all right, but upper mids struggle with naturalism. Things do not sound as natural as they do down below, even though they're thinner. And I find that instruments like woodwinds, brass, and strings can sound a little bit stretched, a little bit strained sounding, and don't have as much of a natural presentation. They lean towards being artificial sounding. The treble is very prominent in the lower treble regions. Like the upper mids, they're very forward. They have a tendency to be a bit hot, and they can be somewhat very much glaring. And then the rest of the treble extends nicely, and there's good air and space up top. And I find that the rest of the treble is somewhat pleasing, but it is still a little bit elevated and can be fatiguing. The tonality of the treble is like the mids. The lower treble is a little too forward, and it can have moments of being strained and stretched and not sounding as natural as the rest of the treble. Soundstage of the E20 is actually quite impressive. It gives you this nice wide distance, and you get this grandness about the width of the E20. I find that it does a good job of showing you differences in venues from small, medium, large, and grand, and you get this nice roundabout field of depth. Things are in front of you and behind you and around you. It's a very immersive presentation. I find that the imaging does a good job of tracking things from side to side, and you can place things on the right, on the left, in the middle, in front, and back, and it does a good job with layering. It's not the most precise and accurate, but it's in this neighborhood over here, it's in here, it's over here, and things move across the stage very nicely. It's a very immersive and engaging type of soundstage. Detail retrieval and resolution of the E20 are okay for its price point. I found that it does an adequate job of giving you the information and the details that are in a track. You're not going to miss anything, but you're also not going to have moments of, wow, I didn't hear it that way before, or I haven't heard that detail before in this track. And also, it does an okay job with resolution. In the upper mids and in the treble regions, it is a little bit on the glassy and more glary type of presentation when it comes to the resolution, but the rest of the E20 does a decent job with resolution. Tone and timbre. The note weight is very thin throughout. It's especially thin in the upper bass, mid bass, and lower mids region. And it is a little bit thicker and a little bit more body weight in the main upper mids and treble regions. I found that it's not the most natural sounding, as mentioned before, with instruments, and timbre can be a little bit off and sound a little bit artificial. So overall, I find that the E20 is just kind of another IEM in its price point. And how does it compare to one of my all-time favorite IEMs in the price point, and that is the Tin Hifi T2. And I find that the Tin Hifi T2 just has more accurate natural tone and timbre. It also is not near as peaky and as aggressive and fatiguing in the mids and in the treble presentation. I find that the T2 is more controlled in that area. Also, the bass, even though it doesn't have the sub bass presence that the E20 has more of a note weight throughout, and overall the T2's bass, mids, and treble are just more cohesive, even, and balanced, and they just play better together, and it's a more pleasant listen. The soundstage of the T2 is not quite as wide and as immersive as the E20, but it does a better job in being more precise in its placement, and also does a better job with detail retrieval and resolution. And overall, I just find that the T2 is a better IEM than the E20. The Aoshida LetShuoer E20. In a nutshell, it is a boring, lacking mid and upper bass. It lacks note weight throughout. It is too elevated in the upper mids and in the treble regions, and the E20 is shouty, and it has middle of the road detail retrieval and resolution. The tone and timbre is mediocre, and it's mainly because of the thinness of the note weight and the elevation of the mids and treble that throw off the tone and timbre. I struggled to really enjoy the E20. I just found it to be boring, and no matter what the source that I was using. I found that the E20, using it on a warmer source that brought in a little bit of the mid bass and upper bass presence and added note weight and tamed the uppers a little bit, I was able to enjoy that more, but at the same time, it really never did anything to stand out and say, hey, You like this. Recommend this. Hey, the E20 is better than other products in this price point. And the E20 just never did that. It never stood out and really said, here you go, I'm worth it. And the E20 is just another IEM in this price point that does some things good and does a lot of things that kind of hold it back. It's been Dave, the Honest Audiophile. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Speaking of next video, somewhere on the screen is a subscription link and notification bell. If you haven't already, please check those off. Don't forget to give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to the video, and check out all the links down below. There's all kinds of information regarding how you can contact the channel, follow the channel, support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, I want to thank all my supporters through Patreon and YouTube memberships. Thank you very much for all that you provide to the channel. It is much appreciated. If you're interested in supporting the channel, you can do it through one-time gifts through PayPal and Venmo, or through monthly subscriptions with Patreon and YouTube memberships, where you can get access to the videos early, and also you can get access to my private Discord server if you're interested. So if you're interested in supporting the channel, it'd be greatly appreciated, and check out the link down below. Also down there's all kinds of other information, music recommendations, gear recommendations, gear rankings, and all sorts of other things. So check out the links down below. And lastly, don't forget to enjoy the music, and that honesty is the best policy.